SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome everyone to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CMOs and CEOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Mike Ehrle, CEO of Clickboarding. It's a SaaS that's an employee experience platform, providing modern, compliant HR solutions that impact onboarding, new hire growth, and retention. Hey, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ken. How are you?
Excellent. And really happy to have you here. I think we're going to have a great episode. But before we dig in, please do tell me just a little bit about yourself and your company, Clickboarding.
Yep. I live in Atlanta, Georgia with my wife and 2 kids. Have been with Clickboarding about a year, and then prior to that in the HR tech space for quite some time. Clickboarding, as your introduction shared, is an onboarding platform at its core and an employee journey platform for really helping somebody through transitions at an enterprise level. So large companies that want to make a different experience for onboarding, entering into a workforce, offboarding, somebody moving between departments, so cross-boarding, a lot of M&A work. That's the core of what we do.
That's great. So let's dig right in. And now this is not a company that you founded, right? So you came to this company, it already existed. How did you uncover this, what I guess is something of a niche in the SaaS space, and get this opportunity to become CEO?
Well, it's a fun story. I was a part of a group of the leadership team of a company called Hodges Mace, headquartered in Atlanta. And after many years of growth, we went through a process and ended up selling the organization to Alight, which is a multi-billion-dollar HR outsourcing firm, great organization with a lot of enterprise clients. Ended up running a big portion of the legacy Hodges Mace under a new Alight name and had a lot of fun with growth with that organization for the period of about a year, cross-selling, proving out, in essence, why Hodges Mace should have been purchased by Alight. We were experiencing such growth that it was tremendous. And we were asked specifically, I was asked, how can we continue this exponential growth? And a lot of what we did within those service lines and technologies in the marketplace touched on a piece of onboarding around employee benefits, but didn't expand into the rest of onboarding. Everything else that you need to do, compliance-wise, engagement-wise, everything else aside from benefits, we didn't touch. And so as I was thinking about how in the world could we exponentially continue the growth that we had just experienced a year after merging Hodges Mace into Alight, I had thought, well, gosh, how could we possibly get into the rest of onboarding, everything that exists out there, again, compliance and engagement-wise, and everything else that goes with that, the offboarding, cross-boarding, the M&A work, et cetera. So started to do some due diligence and found several companies in the industry that have onboarding solutions, most of which are baked into some HCM all-in-one platform, human capital management platform. Think of the Workdays, the SAPs, and the Oracles. And no offense to them, but not only is it baked into this big complex platform, but when you talk to their clients, they unilaterally say they don't love their onboarding experience. So I found a couple different companies that had this as its standalone solution and honed in particularly on Clickboarding. Got to know the founder very well, who was the former CEO, and he and I, over the course of many, many months, were discussing the possibility of even buying Clickboarding and melding it into the company that I was at Alight. Long story short, we decided not to move forward. I think Alight would tell you they have a lot more to do in the healthcare space and wanted to wait on something like this without sharing anything beyond that. It was all very positive, no negatives. In fact, I was still so enthused by the opportunity. The founder, who was the CEO, He came back to me and he's had 6 successful builds in the SaaS space. He has built 6 different companies and sold them. And he's just a wonderful human in general and all the success. He said to me, Mike, you have a vision for this. Why don't you take it? Why don't you run as the CEO and see what you can accomplish here? So that was a year ago, almost to the day. And a lot of challenges existed in that period of time, but it's getting there and we're having a lot of fun and doing a lot of interesting things and even having some experience internationally with our software, which is quite humbling. So that's the story, a little unique. The stars seem to align for some reason.
Well, actually, I think in our interviews of CEOs, there's a fair number who have had consulting or other kind of roles, engagement with CEOs or founders of companies, and the constructive relationships that have come out of those things have created opportunities like this. So I think it's kind of a way to encourage, people kind of following in your footsteps, say, hey, these consulting gigs, these potential M&A targets, they might have a future life if you allow for that, right? You have to keep your mind open for that. And
I never anticipated it, but it's funny you say it like that, because also through nearly a year prior to that, when I was looking at the company from a due diligence lens, I thought you get exposed to so much into the organization that it makes, after you join as the leader of that company, all that due diligence, all of that work looking at the company, to your point, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a banker, PE fund, whatever it might be, you're doing all this due diligence on this firm. You end up with a view, a perspective of the competitive landscape, where it fits, how it should work, how is it distributed, what's working, what's not working. I had exposure to that. And so when I did enter a year ago, it wasn't as if it was day one. By doing so, I was able to say, okay, this is the strategy. This is where it needs to fit. This could be the structure that we should employ. Here's what's working in the go-to-market side. Here's not. There was a lot of learnings and some things I didn't get right, but most certainly did not have to come in blind. So I think you bring up a good point.
Yeah. And so that takes us to our next topic about that early time as CEO. How did this deeper knowledge maybe affect your first, 90, 100-day plan? And, what were the key things that you wanted to accomplish as a new CEO there?
I am laughing to myself because there were so many things that even in my due diligence, I missed. So for those consultants, perhaps, that are taking that venture after they've thought they've seen it all and they were ready for it, I thought I had seen it all through that due diligence. What could I have possibly missed? And in week 1, I found out, as an example, and I've shared this laughingly with our team since then, but week 1, I learned that half of our engineering team was in Ukraine. So that was that was a lesson. And I got to know that team really quick. And this is not really the nature of where your question's going. I'll get back to where your question's going. But I quickly recognized this could be a serious situation for us. Got to know that team really, really well. I was planning on going to Kyiv and meeting them. I was going to go this last April. Now, this is all the way back November, December, January, before Russia attacked Ukraine. And we had a team of 8 individuals there. So I guess a little less than half our engineering team, but 8 individuals there. Every single one of those folks, super smart. Got to know them via Zoom with frequent conversations, individual conversations. Loved them and really wanted them to stay with us. But we had to prepare as an organization. So I just reflect, not that that was an example that's worth going into too much depth, but that is an example of something that I was unprepared for, that I needed to get prepared for very, very quick. And we were actually successful in moving 6 of those 8 individuals out of Ukraine before Russia ended up attacking, which was the rest of the story in that one. Wow. But yeah, it was amazing. But that is an example of, even though you think you're prepared, you're not. And so I think in your first period of time in that role, what I learned, maybe not everybody has this experience, I invested the time to get to know as many people as I could. And that was easy here because we have less than 100 employees. We have about 60. So I was able to form a relationship with every person that works here. I don't know if I'd be able to do that if there were 6,000 employees. In fact, I know I couldn't. So that's not always scalable. But I think communication, frequency of communication, transparency, being humble, trying to understand and share that this is a learning for you too. Even though I had all that due diligence, I didn't have all the answers. It doesn't mean that you have to show up and say, oh, folks, I don't know what to do. No, that's not it. But it's your willingness to hear what their experiences is and apply that to a strategy that you're hoping that they're willing to take seriously.
Well, I think it's a really great point. I've done as a consultant, pretty deep dives on companies, and you always discover things that were different than your discovery, right? So your sort of discovery phase two, there always seems to be something laying out there waiting for you. And so you have to keep revisiting, I guess, your key assumptions and your key dependencies, in this case, your team, right? So that's not uncommon. We had the CEO of Eventry here, which is an event management application, and he came into the job a couple of weeks before the pandemic. So his entire planning cycle, everything he had learned about this company, within a few weeks of coming on board, he had to redo everything. So, I think it's a good point. You got to be ready to get new information and act on that, right?
You do. We had to deal with a couple of things besides Ukraine. Our product and sales teams, in full exposure and transparency on this podcast, our product and sales teams did not get along. It was causing a cultural fissure in our organization. They did not see eye to eye. Product naturally thought that they should run the company. Sales naturally thought that should run the company. Neither run the company. Now, ultimately, you don't have a company if you don't have revenue and growth. And your clients are the ones that are ultimately dictating your future and what the market is willing to buy and what they're willing to pay. Right? So it is a market, and it is called a market for a reason. And that's sometimes a hard pill for product to swallow. But then again, if you don't have a product team that really understands the market and where it's going, you don't have something to sell. So the two have to collaborate. They have to work together. So that was actually another thing that I learned in my first 100 days. And I brought in a leader to run product who did not have agile background. So we're in a SaaS podcast here, and that was purposeful. So that was a learning that I had. How can we get somebody in here without your stereotypical product background, who wasn't a product zealot, but did understand HR technology, did understand how the market worked? And even though that individual probably could have done more to understand the detail around agile, that person brought stability to the product team and unified that organization with the rest of the company, which was greatly needed. And now we're in a good spot, and we really needed to make that change. So that's just one example too of something I wasn't expecting that you're going to run into.
Sure. I think the people dynamic it's hard for an outsider to pick all that stuff up, right? Until you're living it, it's hard to do.
It really is. The personalities, everything that goes into it, the history, they're not going to share that with you prior to getting into the weeds, getting your hands in there and figuring out what's going on.
Yeah. And being willing to take that information and make constructive change. Again, I think really important lesson there for others, right? You have to be willing to make good change. Let's keep talking a little bit about product. In our prior conversation, we talked about all-in-one versus best of breed. And, I think in a land with really giant HR softwares, a startup has to do something really well in order to coexist and maybe even have a synergy with those firms. And I just thought it would be kind of interesting for you to talk a little bit about the positioning of clickboarding as a best of breed and how that impacts your go-to-market and the overall marketing and product.
I could talk about this the entire time. So you need to interrupt and shut me up at moments. But it's the best in breed. And I even referenced a few of their names earlier, like the Workdays, the SAPs, the Oracles. I light up with enthusiasm when we're talking to enterprise clients that say they work with some of those companies, because the next thing that follows from them is that when it's specific to the work that we address, that we solve for, onboarding, which is the core of what we do, there aren't many companies that are out there that will tell you they are so excited by the way they onboard new employees into the organization. There are very few. That's been my experience, which is actually why I found the space so appealing and why I wanted in. And our clients, I like to believe, are very happy with the way they onboard their employees, but it takes a lot of work, and we're evolving with them too. And it's all down to the integration back into the big all-in-one platform. And what we do at Clickboarding, it's not rip out and replace. We're not saying Workday, SAP, Oracle. We're not saying that those companies shouldn't exist. Of course they should. They're multi-billion-dollar corporations. What we're saying is they can't possibly be experts at every component that it takes for an HR team to solve. And our niche of this world is onboarding people into big organizations in a very compliant way, in a way that that person who's brand new to that super huge company feels if they are joining a team, they're excited by day one, they can't wait to get into the detail, and they're not spending their first 2 weeks on all the stuff that they should have done way before being hired. And that's actually where we found our niche, and that's how we define onboarding. And I think what makes clickboarding so unique. A lot of these all-in-one platforms, I think, define onboarding as your first day on the job. So Mike Earle joins a company. Day one, I'm going through half my day in some of those big platforms, going through all these modules and preparing for my new job. When in fact, I've had all this time from the moment my offer letter went out, in some cases, maybe a month or 6 weeks before day one. Why am I not in some technology prior to day one working on all of these steps connecting to my I-9, the background check information? Of course, you do the background check before you get hired, but why am I not handling all those pieces before day one? Why am I not getting to know via a technology, the team I'm going to be working with, the rules of the road, the equipment that I'm going to need, all of that stuff? It's a bunch of hard work and it's distracting. And from an ROI perspective at the employer level, you want Mike Earle showing up day one, ready to go, not stuck in all the compliance, boring detail that makes you wonder, or would make Mike Earle wonder, why did I join this company again? So you want that first impression to be everything. There's a lot of data on that. So anyways, that's where clickboarding really has made our name. And we then integrate back into the Workdays, the SAPs, the Oracles. And due to that work being extraordinarily difficult and not easily repeatable, you would think that we'd have 1,500 competitors out there. We don't, because I think what people find, the big talent acquisition technologies, the recruitment firms, they're all trying to figure out onboarding right now. I think what they'll tell you, the ones that have decided to build their own solution versus compete, the nuances of onboarding is so hard that this is actually a tough thing to get right. And I think that's why the all-in-ones are struggling with this. It's really a difficult thing to get right. So the best in breed solution, that's what your question was getting at. The best in breeds are relevant, and they always will be, because they can invest and they're taking the time to study it over years, just that one thing, and dig deep onto it and make the solution as configurable yet scalable as possible for those super big clients, or any client of any size, really. Just in our world, the bigger the better, because complexity is a friend of ours.
Yeah, so let's back this out a little bit from the case at clickboarding to, the best of breed.
Yeah. Okay.
Working it against an enterprise solution, or sharing a market with enterprise solutions. Seems like there's an opportunity here, not just to appeal to the end user organization, but also these large software companies and other participants, right?
If I'm a super huge, big platform company, I could be fearful of the best in breeds, or I can embrace the best in breeds. And I think you see a little bit of those out there. The best in breeds, they can't do everything. Otherwise, they'd be a major competitor. So wouldn't you rather be a huge HCM all-in-one platform who embraces the best in breed? Because therefore, if you create a seamless, I hate that word, but a better way for integrations to work with that best in breed solution with your all-in-one, you can now appeal to the big company out there. Fill in the blank. Walmart. Excuse me, Walmart, for picking on you. You're not a client of ours, but I'm just going to pick on you because you're a name everyone knows. So let's pretend you're Walmart and you use a super big platform out there, but something to you is extremely critical. Your background check platform is really important to you. You want that to work super well. You want to make sure you have an integration into that super big platform. And you at Walmart want to make sure that it's the best background check software you could possibly have. If I were the big all-in-one, I would want to make sure Walmart is willing to buy me, because I'm willing to integrate also with that best in breed background check software that they value so greatly. I'm going to make that as easy as possible in Walmart. And I want Walmart to know that it's going to be as easy as possible on them, versus Walmart fighting with the all-in-one to fix perhaps a background check situation that they aren't good at doing. Wouldn't you be frustrated being this huge decision maker at Walmart that your platform won't solve for that?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the forum play is relevant in the HR space, right? That these large players are looking, or have become, platforms in and of themselves, right?
They have. And what's occurring in the space is the integrations between these have become a whole industry in of itself. So known as APIs. So you're sending data almost real time between the best in breeds like the clickboardings of the world into the super big all-in-one platforms of the world so that it's feeding information real time. Now, you could argue that some employers out there could cobble together almost their own HCM by a collection of 100 different best in breed solutions for every little nuance, and then API all the data together, and you never need the all-in-one. You could argue that. And there are companies out there, these API companies out there that are getting so good that maybe one day that happens. And maybe that's a real threat to the Workdays, Oracles, and SAPs. Maybe so. I don't think we're there. I don't think we're there in the near future. But it certainly makes being in the best in breed market a lot more fun and interesting and viable.
So how has that been realized at Clickboarding? What does your go-to-market look like with these companies? What does the channel management look like for you?
For the big all-in-ones? Yeah. So we often cases like a Workday, that's open source code. So you're working with a Workday, you get to know and download, if you will, this is my terminology, their API information, and you are connecting to their APIs. You're connecting to them as an organization. You're building that throughput so that your client knows you have the experience to make an API work with Workday. So we within Clickboarding, to answer your question, we have our own integrations team. We have an integrations czar, I like to refer to them. That person doesn't like that term, so excuse me if they listen to this later. But we have to understand how to build those API connections very efficiently. We also have 2 outside partners that help us in those channel management with the big Workdays of the world. And frankly, our relationship with Workday, they probably don't even know that we're connecting to them all the time because that's how they operate. They've designed it so that they don't need to know. And as long as their client is hiring us, we can connect back right into Workday on their behalf with their knowledge at the client level. And we're piecing together something and making it much easier. Now, there's other platforms out there that we have to have a channel strategy with. And that is a big way. And we've more specifically realized this. We're banging our head against the wall day in and day out, going directly to the Fortune 500s of the world. And I can't imagine if I'm Home Depot and UPS and I'm a decision maker at one of those companies, I can't imagine how many phone calls those folks get every single day from companies. Little old clickboarding, I lead clickboarding, and I probably get 20 to 30 solicitations via LinkedIn in a day. And I can't imagine being the CHRO of Home Depot, how many that individual gets. How many of those are you going to listen to and be willing to respond to, take a meeting with? It's exhausting. You're going to pass it to somebody in your team, maybe if it is the pressing emergent need of the organization, which we being Clickboarding like to believe that onboarding is the pressing need that they are solving for more than anything else. They need to make sure onboarding's right. There's some truth to that. Every day. Who wouldn't want onboarding to be solved more than anything else? But I'm probably being a bit naive that there's maybe something else that's more concerning. Now, all kidding aside, retention's a big deal, and onboarding is the first step in retention strategy, and our platform solves for that. But put the commercial aside for a minute. I think instead of banging my head against the wall, trying to get Home Depot to take a meeting with us every single day, having a partner that already has Home Depot as an integrated big client and working with them efficiently and walking in hand, excuse the term, to a Home Depot is a much faster route to success. And we have seen that. And so we've seen our channel strategy in a short period of time deliver great results. And we are ramping that up right now. We're in the middle of conversations with 5 or 6 well-known names that know that we are probably one of the best, if not the best, for onboarding. Why not work with us and have us hand in hand with them as an upsell opportunity, frankly, for them, those companies, those firms that we're partnering with, for all those big name clients that they have. Instead of me having 200 people going in direct sales, why would I do that when I could instead build an awesome channel strategy and have the same business in a different way?
I think it's a hurdle for first-time CEOs and sales leaders. When you're a small company and yet you have an enterprise solution, you want to control your destiny, so you feel the direct force of 3 or 4 salespeople against a nationwide footprint. Very hard to make a dent. At the same time, you have to be able to wait for a partner strategy to yield fruit. So you probably need a little of both working in order to make it all happen. But
You're right.
That's a great point.
And I'm terribly impatient. So we have a CRO, he's fabulous, and he has a commercial sales team, and they are getting direct leads and everything else. But why does it have to be one or the other? I think what we've realized is, why are we not mirroring those two individuals? Our chief strategy officer owns partnerships. She is totally fabulous. One of the first people that worked at Clickboarding, one of my favorite people. She can build relationships like none other. She has these awesome partnerships that we are forming, that we have. She's building the umbrella of the relationship and the go-to-market plan with them. Why is the CRO, it's a rhetorical question, why isn't the CRO partnering with our partners, bringing in our enterprise salespeople to help them close logo by logo by logo? And I think that's where a lot of these strategies are amiss. They're not working. If you just expect this bifurcated, this is the partner team and this is the commercial team and they shall not communicate, I think that's naive. I think it's so much better, and we're doing this right now. We're just turning it on. Bring in the partner, you lead the partner team, and you do so from an umbrella relationship. Yet your partner will not sell your solution because they don't know all the ins and outs of your solution. They need to have a trusted friend in your organization who is an experienced salesperson, an enterprise professional that will not embarrass them, that they can trust and go into, I'm going to pick on Walmart again, go into Walmart and say, hey, I'm ABC Big Platform. Here is my friend from the specialty organization Clickboarding. This person is an expert at this. And you mentioned to me, Walmart, that onboarding was important to you. Here, I want you to know our new trusted partnership. Here's Bob here from Clickboarding. Bob is going to help us talk about what makes them so unique. Why can't it be that way? Bob still makes the same amount of commission. Bob still does well. We're going to double up on the quota. I know CFOs have heart attacks on that entire thing, but why not? You can accommodate all of it with the math.
So I just want to sort of make sure we note a theme throughout your narrative here, that it's a lot of harmonizing your business is going on here, whether it's product and sales or business development and sales. It sounds like one of the things that's really important to you is getting everybody working really well together, and if need be, incentivizing that behavior.
It is. And I like to believe I've spent a lot of time on that. It's getting people to work together is natural once they realize they're allowed to do so. And it's really such a weird thing. I would say that a lot of people didn't believe me at first on that. In fact, to one of your questions earlier, one of the key learnings I had on the front end, I said, was communication and being humble and talking and having big ears. I have big ears, by the way, but I mean it in the listening side. So, but allowing folks to also know that they can reach across the aisle, excuse the metaphor, on just before the midterms, but they can reach across the aisle and trust those other individuals and other teams and work together. I said earlier, we're less than 100 employees. Well, one day I like to believe we'll be over 1,000 employees. And I hope we operate the same way. I recognize teams have teams for a reason. I recognize they operate differently, but harmonization is a great word, Ken. And I love that you said it. I believe in it. And I also realize sometimes it doesn't have its place. You might have compliance reasons where you can't make that work. There might be some antitrust reason why you can't do that, between maybe if I worked at a big defense contractor, maybe this side of the business can't talk to that side of the business. That's an extreme example. But in our business, we can do it. And it's working, and it's helping us scale, and it's helping us fix problems. And I will tell you that our employee net promoter score has gone from 19 to 54. In 1 year. Our Glassdoor has gone from 2.8 to 4.4 in 1 year, and I think it is working.
It definitely comes across in how you tell the story of your experience so far, no doubt. Hey, I want to dig just a little bit into the proposition for the product, because I think this really important part. You've talked about working with very large organizations that hire and manage large numbers of people. So there must be an awesome value prop in better managing onboarding in the early days of an employee and their relationship. Can you just walk us through a little bit about how Clickboarding positions the ROI from doing a better job here?
Yep. The first step is just to use an extreme example. If you and I had a company of 2 employees and we decided to hire a third employee, I could make the case that the ROI on hiring clipboarding and implementing clipboarding might not be worth it because we have only one person that we need to onboard. And between the two of us, Ken, I bet we could figure out how to make that person feel very welcome and do so in a short period of time. So our value proposition, our ROI isn't always relevant at the lower end of the marketplace, the small end of the marketplace, due to that, because perhaps an HR team can do that or a founder can do that work on their own. And it's very easy. If you're making probably less than 20 hires a year, you can handle that work yourself and you're probably fine. But you start to get beyond that, and there is a lot of necessary components that go into this. I said and cited earlier the connectivity to the I-9, background check connectivity. Our software, as an example, is getting down to the zip code. So I'm originally born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. That's only relevant compared to living in Atlanta now because St. Louis has a city tax. At least it did then. You have a local tax, you have a state tax, you have a federal tax. That is a big deal. So when you have that compared to Atlanta, those are two different things. But that is the value proposition of having just a scalable technology that can help a large organization. Going back to my Walmart example, how do you possibly make 100,000 new hires a year feel as if they're a part of something in any repeatable way? You can have a great training guide, and I don't know how many people in HR Walmart has. And again, Walmart, excuse me for using you as the example, but you're just a huge employer. So I'm going to use you as an example without knowing anybody in your HR team. But you have 100,000 or more hires a year. How do you possibly create a scalable, repeatable experience that can somewhat ensure that everybody feels the same thing the same way? That is the value of a SaaS-based technology that can take the compliance animal out of it, that can also add an engaging element to it, add videos, add pieces of their own unique team, all of which designed for even business unit within that super large organization. To me, that's the ROI that's immediately captured in this.
Does it improve like the percentage of people from accepting the offer who actually start work? And what about in terms of the
ghosting,
the retention, in the first like 3 to 6 months of employment?
So big time on both. And here's why. Our technology can know if people, because we're starting from perhaps the offer letter. So we can know from our technology from the offer letter day to the day of hire, that could be anywhere from a minimum of 2 weeks to maybe 6 weeks. We know all the 6 or 7 steps that they're going to be going through one at a time in a very linear fashion, in a way that's super easy to follow and very engaging for that employee. We're going to know based on the admin dashboard who's taking those steps and who is not. And so that administrator, that HR person can get into our HR portal, our admin portal, and they can say, oh, we have 14 people out of the 100 that we have just hired in this last month that are not going through these steps. I wonder if they're ghosting us. So it naturally cuts way down on that because you know the people that aren't taking the steps that they need to. So you're immediately cutting that Mickey Mouse game out, which I don't even understand the notion of ghosting. This cuts down on that. To your point on retention, I mentioned that there's a cadence and it reaches out via the technology. We actually continue that after day 1. We call it click retain. There's no reason after day 1 that we can't reach out to you on day 7, 14, 30, 60, 90. How are you doing? Are you getting along with the team? How's the training? And diagnose. Are you wishing you had not taken this job? Is there a problem? Cleanup needed in aisle 5, and that HR team can react to it and get in front of it before that person puts their notice in, because those first 90 days are the entire game when it comes to retention. There's a lot of data behind that. That is not Mike Ehrle on a podcast saying it. There's a lot of data showing the first 90 days, if you don't have that person hooked into your culture, you have a good chance of losing them.
Hey, one last question. Has something changed about all this with remote and now hybrid working really taking over? Is there more of a need?
Absolutely. Very biased in saying that, but I've also experienced it. So we as a company, albeit I've mentioned it a couple of times in this phone call, controllable because we're less than 100 employees, but we got rid of our company headquarters. And so we are 100% virtual. And so it's natural for that to be more of a problem. And so technology matters more than ever. You're going to lean on it. I don't see it changing. Even though to my buddy who lives across the street from me, who's in commercial real estate, he probably would shoot me for saying it. I do not see that trend changing. I think we are in a hybrid work environment for the foreseeable future. Ken, I think you are hosting this podcast from your house, if I can tell correctly. I'm sitting in my home. I think a whole chunk of at least our country is working from home now on a more frequent basis, at least for a good part of the week. And so if that's the case, how much of this are you handling at home? And when it comes to finding a new job and applying to a new job, accepting a new job, going through the paperwork for a new job while you're still at your old job, yes, doing so from the comfort of your home on your mobile device tends to be very scalable. And so we find that it's happening more and more, and the interest level in what we're doing has increased.
Hey, I think this is a great place to land our episode. Mike, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about clickboarding, how can they do that?
They can shoot me an email at mehrle@clickboarding.com if they would like to reach out. That's the easiest way. You can go to our website as well and find more information at clickboarding.com, but shoot me a note if you'd like.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. This was a great episode. Really enjoyed the conversation. And if people want to reach me, I'm on LinkedIn at linkedin.in/Ken Lempit or austinlawrence.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you pick up your podcasts, pretty widely distributed. And thanks again, Mike. This was an awesome and really meaningful conversation. Really appreciate your time.
Ken, I enjoyed it. Thank you for making the time. I wish you a great day.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards Podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempit at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.